also I should some reference has to be made to Tecumseh in 1812, and Tecumseh and Shingwak I include in the same breath, because Shingwak fought alongside Tecumseh during the War of 1812, and Tecumseh as well was was given, or his movement began with a vision of his younger brother Lalawisika, who much as Niwen, both Niwen and Lalawisika had visions where they saw the end of our way of life, the Anishinaabe way of life, if we didn't attempt to provide opposition to what was taking place with respect to the coming of the European into Manitowoc. So their visions, they had spiritual visions. Their visions focused on survival, identity, and rejecting the European way of life. And so Tecumseh, as had Pontiac before him, took to war in 1812. And Tecumseh, it's rather interesting that Tecumseh, it was the first time that a European fighting force would fight under the leadership of an Anishinaabe leader. And so British forces would follow often, I shouldn't say often, but during this time, fought under the leadership of both Tecumseh and Shingwak, which was unique in and of itself. Pontiac, on the other hand, just to come back to Pontiac for a bit, fought alongside the French, but the French did not fight under the leadership of Pontiac. So it's kind of an interesting thing to bear in mind when you talk about these three leaders. Anyways, for Tecumseh and Shingwak, if it hadn't been for Tecumseh and Shingwak, Canada wouldn't exist today as it does. Canada would have been a mere historical footnote, because it has to be said, and I think it has to be understood and has to be known, that if it were not for these the Anishinaabe leaders or the Three Fires Confederacy who protected the what we now know as the northern border, the northern frontier, which is now Canada. If it were not for these two leaders, as I said, Canada would have been a mere historical footnote in the annals of history. So these three leaders really had an important role to play in terms of how Canada, the United States, kind of evolved into these two countries. And fundamental to that, or as an aside to that, the Three Fires Confederacy was very much part of this, all of these things that took place. So, why do I talk about that? Well, for me, it's been a passion of mine for the last short while. And some of the things I want to talk about, just in terms of how I came to some of this information, was Anishinaabe. We have our own specific way of knowing, and we have our own specific way of doing, of gaining knowledge and doing things. And from an academic's perspective, obviously, we talk about epistemology. What is epistemology? Nanakatao Inchigewin. You know, how did how did we come to be, and how did we come to this place? And you know, as I said, you know, the academic world has this really fancy word called epistemology. Anishinaabe, we have this term called Nanakatao Inchigewin, which tells us that, which describes to us how we came to think this way about our world and about ourselves as people. And part of that, obviously, is begins with our creation story. And for Anishinaabe people, as an Ojibwe Anishinaabe, you know, it begins with Wanabujum, the creation, and well, I shouldn't say it begins with Wanabujum, but it begins with the story of the Great Flood and so on, and the turtle and all of those animal beings that sought to create this world or this land on the back of the Great Turtle. So that's one aspect, that's one layer to our way of knowing. The other, Inatizuin, like how we live in this world. We're guided by you know, the seven teachings. We're guided by natural law, Anishinaabe natural law. And I say Anishinaabe, when I say Anishinaabe, I'm speaking specifically of Ojibwe, Udawa, Potawatomi, Miami, Mi'kmaq, all of those nations of people that see themselves as Anishinaabe, or these human beings. And I'm speaking specifically of those, of that nation, of those nations. So, and now this is when how we, you know, how we live in this world, as I said, is, you know, we're guided by rules, and we're guided by laws, our laws, laws that were left to us or bequeathed to us by Kichimanetu. And you know, they're the most simplest of terms, but they're the most difficult to, you know, they're the most difficult to follow at times. So anyway, and that's the another layer to our being and to our way of knowing, and that's the ontology. That's the academic term that you know, people would use to describe this layer. The third layer, how we come to this way of knowing is the methodology, how we gain knowledge. For Anishinaabe, we use many different gifts. The gift to dream, the gift to have vision. We use matuts, you know, we use ceremony. The matutsan, the sweat lodge, the chishkan, you know, the shade tent. We use the sun dance. You know, we use ceremony to gain knowledge, to ask direction for life, or to a good life, to